Hello, and welcome to the Low Season Traveller Influencer series of podcasts, where each week for the past 6 weeks, we've been speaking to the next generation of travel influencers who inspire us to travel to new and exciting destinations around the world. So you are all very welcome to this final episode of our 6-part series, and today I am delighted to be joined by Petrena. Petrena is a travel media content creator. Her channel on YouTube has millions of viewers, and when you watch one or two, you'll be hooked, and it immediately becomes clear as to why her content is so popular. Petrena is real. It's evident that she cares deeply for the communities and destinations she visits. As she tells me in this episode, it's as much about travelling between communities for her as it is travelling between destinations. Petrena is also a passionate fan of low season travelling. By travelling in the low seasons, she tries to integrate more deeply into the communities that she visits. She truly gets under the skin of the community. In this episode, we talk about her travels through Africa, massages, marriage, would you believe, food, Mallorca, and the traveller's art of conversing when neither side speak the other's language. A natural-born traveller, the epitome of a low-season traveller, and a true responsible traveller, I'm delighted to introduce you to Petrena. Enjoy. So Petrena, you are most welcome to the Low Season Traveller Insider Guides podcast. Great to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
We're super excited to have you, Petrena. First of all, I suppose, look, tell us where you are. Tell our listeners where you are right now and what you're up to.
Well, I'm not in the most exciting place in the world, but I'm in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. It is exciting because I haven't been here. I haven't been home in a year and a half, so I'm finally home. Just doing quarantine right now, catching up on a lot of work and doing the quarantine.
Fair play, doing the hard yards as any travellers have had to do in the past 16 months, I guess. And hey, yeah. there's worse places to be. I'm absolutely sure of that. Do you know? I've never been to Calgary. I'd love to go actually.
It's really nice.
So one of the questions that we always ask is, and I want to get this right, how do you describe what you do? Are you a social media creative, a content creator, an influencer, a YouTuber, a grammer? How do you describe what you do, or do you try not to describe it exactly?
I always find that a tough one. Yeah, I don't know if I've narrowed it down to one word because I do a few things, but like travel media content creator is one way I would put it, but that doesn't entail everything I do. But if I'm trying to sum it up, especially for this, you can just say that.
I love it. So for our listeners, tell us a little bit about. So I came across you on your YouTube channel, which is just absolutely fabulous. If you love travel and love finding out about new destinations, your YouTube channel is just superb. Tell us a little bit about what you do really, with regards to your YouTube channel and the kind of travels that you do and what you're trying to bring across to your audience.
So my YouTube channel, it's travel and natural health, because those are two things I'm passionate about, travel and adventure, because as much as I love traveling across the world, I also love exploring my own backyard. So there's always adventure and travel to be had no matter where you are. And that's really important to me and important to share. And I really love, low season travel in particular, because throughout my whole travel life, I think the best experiences I've had was during the low season, because that's when you really get to know the culture, you get to know the community, you get to know the people on a deeper level. And if you spend a certain amount of time there, say a few months, you really get to become a part of the place. So now I can say I have homes all over the world because there's many places I can go. And I have friends, and it's just another home for me.
I love that, it shines through actually on your videos as well. I've got to say, just obviously we'll be sharing your feed, on the Low Season Traveller website. But some of the titles of your videos as well really sort of tell people how it's cooking with locals, It's discovering with locals. This one's brilliant. I share my life with 2 wives, which I thought was fabulous as well. But you can sort of see that you really get under the skin of not just the destination, but the people, the community. I almost feel that rather than traveling to destinations, you're traveling to communities as much as you are destinations, right?
It's true, yes, because I love people and I love cultures and I love learning how people think and understanding their way of thought, because it's so interesting. We are raised one way and programmed one way, and we think life is one way, but you go to another culture where they were raised differently, different thought pattern, and it's just so interesting. But then you also find the similarities, like, the most universal thing is people like love laughing together. So even though I don't speak the same language with people, laughter is a universal language. I could have people laughing so hard even when we don't speak the same language, and I love that.
It's so funny, isn't it? I've had that experience before where I've been in places more in the Far East where I don't speak a word of the language. They don't speak a word of English. And yet we can almost have a conversation. And it amazes me that we can actually have, I can have friends that neither of us understand a word that is uttered from our mouths, but yet it's that kind of, I don't know if it's that non-verbal communication that's just actually more powerful than we realize actually a lot of the time, hey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us this, how did you get into this sort of traveling lifestyle, and when did you get into it?
Okay, well, I think I was born a traveler. That was just ingrained in my little being. Even when I was a child, at say 7 years old, when I would have school holidays, I'd be like, Mom, who's going to take me? I have 2 weeks off school. Like, start phoning people, phone your friends. Someone's going to take me, put me on a bus. You're sending me on a trip. So I've always loved traveling. And my first time, like, funny, when I was about 7, actually, I started watching those African infomercials about the orphanages in Africa, and I would be enamored with them, watching them for hours. And even at that age, I knew I needed to go to Africa one day, and I needed to experience that life because it was just so foreign. And watching it on the TV, knowing that that's also real life for people, I knew right then I have to visit Africa one day. I didn't know it would become to the extent that it has, but yeah, I was enamored with Africa. I even asked my mom when I was young, can we adopt an African child? And she's like, I told her I want to adopt one. I was like, Mom, I want to adopt an African child. And she's like, no, you are a child still, but you're not.
Yeah, you can perform it.
Yeah, I don't see the problem here. It's not that easy. Yeah, so that started really young. And then all through high school, when I knew, planning college and all this, in my heart, all I wanted to do was pack a backpack and go travel the world. And that's what I was telling people. I'm like, you know what? I just want to get a backpack and travel the world, maybe go to Europe. I was like thinking Europe seemed like the place I wanted to go. And people were telling me then, you can't just pack a bag and go to foreign countries you know nothing about. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can. And then once I started doing it, like, life just started ricocheting me around everywhere. I was like leading volunteer projects deep in the jungles of Central and South America. And after I did that for a couple of years is when I wanted to fulfill my dream of going to Africa. Didn't plan anything, just booked a plane ticket to Cape Town, returned from Cairo, Egypt. No tour, nothing like that. Just figured, oh, well, if I'm going to go to Africa, I might as well see the whole continent. And then life just continued to unfold. I was just meant to travel, I think.
I love that. I must admit, when you sort of say that, I kind of get the goosebumps as well when you sort of say, you just book it and you go. And I think I think for people that love travel, the thoughts of just getting a ticket and figuring it out when you get there, that gets me excited. Straight away, I'm like, even as you're saying it, I'm like, oh, I need to get back doing that. I need to get back doing that. I need to get back out there, because there's something incredibly invigorating when you land at that airport and it's like, you've got to figure out everything from scratch. And it's actually, I've got to ask on that. I possibly know the answer, but there are some people that, when they're doing a trip, that, they plan it to ridiculous levels. They know every step of the way. They've researched excuse my language, the crap out of it. And then there's others which literally just figure, you know what, I'm going to figure it when I go. Is that your approach? Is it the former or the latter?
I think now, as I've gotten a bit older, it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
Because I do like sometimes just knowing, okay, I have a place to go when I get there. It's going to be comfortable. I'll be fine. And then other times I'm just like in the mood to just go and figure it out, because sometimes when you're just figuring it out, it can be a little stressful and unexpected difficulties can arise. But then sometimes when you plan, the plans don't go as you planned, and then that's stressful. So really, it's just, I guess, depends on what I'm feeling at the time. Do I want to kind of feel like I can ease my way into it and be a little comfortable and then go for it, or do I want to just go for it?
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? But there's something. Yeah, maybe you're right. Actually, I'm just sort of thinking. So I'm 50 years of age now myself, and I'm sure a few of our listeners are in the same bracket as myself. And I kind of wonder, would I have the courage to literally just book a ticket to somewhere I've never been and figure it out literally from the beginning? Maybe not quite. Maybe I'd book the first 2 nights or something. I don't know. Yeah, but it's interesting. One of the questions that we have for you is, you've traveled, obviously extensively at this stage around our world, and yes, I'm sure you have a whole load of destinations that you'd possibly like to visit in the future. What I'd like to know, though, is, who or what influences your decisions for travel, as in where you're going to travel to next? Because your content, I would imagine, influences a lot of people's dreams, desires, things that they'd like to do, and maybe where they'd like to travel to in the future themselves. Who or what influences your travel decisions?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because sometimes I just decide, I feel like I want to go to a place. I'm like, I need to go to this place. And that's like where I have my mind. But then sometimes I get an opportunity that presents itself in my life in a place that's usually always travel related. And because I'm also very spontaneous, I'm like, oh, well, that sounds amazing. And then I'll just take that opportunity. And that's usually how I go about it. Is I'm very spontaneous. I wouldn't say like, okay, so I haven't been to Asia yet. So this is a big one. I need to go to Asia, because that's like a whole continent that I haven't seen. So that's kind of top of my list right now. But for the most part, yeah, I just kind of go with the flow and see where the inspiration jumps at me. And then I go.
I love that. I love that. Next question that we have for you. We on the podcast series, and actually, in all of the content that we sort of produce, when we're looking at destinations, we're interested in cultural heritage, because the cultural heritage, whether it's temples or buildings or the less tangible dances, music, everything else, it's there all year round. It's there in the low season, it's there in the high season. You don't need to be there in the high season to appreciate cultural heritage in a destination. And one of the aspects of cultural heritage that we absolutely love, and I say I certainly absolutely love, is the food. Anywhere I go, I love trying different foods. So what I'd like to know is, of all the places that you've been to, tell us about any food which you have, or cuisine which you have particularly enjoyed or found unusual, or anything sort of remarkable. And I'm sure there's probably quite a few that you've got to choose from, maybe too many.
I know that's a hard one, actually. It really is, because I have tried a lot of good food. But I think, I love Mediterranean food. So I spent a lot of time in Mallorca. That's like a second home to me. I love Mallorca. Yep. And food there is so fresh, so much seafood. That to me, and olives, when you go to the market, there's like hundreds of olives. It's like an olive heaven. And cheese, yeah. So that kind of stuff. And the olive oil. Yeah, see, now I'm thinking about it, and it's taking me there.
I love that.
I love the Mediterranean food. And actually in Africa, one thing that I loved about Africa is they eat so many different like leaves of plants, like sweet potato leaves, and like all these leaves that I never would have thought of eating, that I didn't even think that you could eat, because it's not something you'd be eating in Canada. So when you go to the markets, you have all these different types of green leaves from all these different plants. And yeah, because I love vegetables, I love eating healthy. So that with a little bit of ugali and sauce, I really actually enjoy that. And
Yeah.
if I don't have it for like a week, I start missing it. So I'm sure I'm going to start missing it soon because I won't be having it for a while.
Yeah.
And then Costa Rica, actually, this is something I also haven't been to Costa Rica again in years, but I've never forgotten how much I love their gallo pinto. And it's like their beans and rice. You have it for breakfast with some
Oh wow.
cheese, a little bit of eggs. So good. I miss that.
I love that. I love that. I love that. You know, wherever you go in the world, you know, again, that's one of the things I love about traveling is even by meal breakfasts and how different they are. And you know, you have a breakfast in India, and it's so far away from the cornflakes that I have or the or the cocoa pops. If it's a weekend, which is allowed, we all know cocoa pops are allowed at the weekend. That's all right. Yeah, I'll have muesli during the week, but just on that, do you ever whenever you stay, and I'm hoping that you're going to make me feel slightly better, because I always tell my family, I've got my two young daughters, and they're always sort of saying, "What do you eat? And what do you eat that we might like?" And I'm like, "Gosh," but I always say for breakfast, and whenever I'm in a hotel, I have what I call the traveler's breakfast, which is when they have a number of different cereals. I tend to get a little bit of each one of the cereals in my bowl, and I have that. Is that just me, or do you do that as well, or do you? You're very healthy though. You probably have
Yeah,
yogurt.
I don't really eat cereal.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. Come on, not even the odd Cocoa Pops on a weekend.
But you know what? I'll tell you what. If I was going to eat cereal, I would make a little mixture. Might as well tell it with everything, right?
Yeah, it's got to be done. It's stuff that you'd never usually have. Awesome.
Exactly.
Listen, next one. Right, most memorable stay or night or sleep or hotel, whatever you want to call it, or any particularly memorable ones that you'd care to mention.
Okay, let me have a think here. I've stayed at so many cool places that it's really hard to narrow it down to just one. Also, let me see what jumps out at. Actually, one of my favorite places that I really loved was in Botswana. When I was just in Africa this past year, I stayed at this camp called a Selby camp in this little tiny random town called Nata. And you know what's funny? Like, I didn't plan to go to Botswana. That just happened because my visa was expiring for Zambia, so I had to go somewhere. And with COVID restrictions, right? I'm like, where can I get a test and then get out of the country? So I ended up going to Botswana. When I got there, I realized it's extremely expensive. And so I was like, wow, this is a little over my budget. But since I was there, I wanted to see something. So I literally opened up Airbnb and I was like trying to find like a more affordable place to go. And there's this random place there called Nata with this little this camp / backpacker camp, I guess. And I was like, okay, well, Google Nata. I'm like, seems like an interesting little place, very tiny town, maybe a couple thousand people live there. And so off I took the bus down to Nata, and then I ended up staying there like a month because I loved it. And it's like right on the Nata River. So there's even a hippo in the river that we had to be careful for. And yeah, I just loved it. It was so cool. And it was just random. And they're right by one of the biggest salt pans in the world. You can actually see it from the satellites. It's so big.
Oh, wow.
And there's a big bird sanctuary there. It was just so cool. And it was just unexpected.
I love that. I love that. I love the fact as well that it's I love the fact that you kind of choose these places that are, a little bit sort of smaller and a bit, kind of, like you say, it's kind of different. We always say with low season travelers, it's like, if the world is going right, you're one of those people who probably is going to go left, just to sort of get a bit of a different perspective or whatever. And I kind of just absolutely love that. I suppose just on that, as you just alluded to, and again, for any of our listeners that haven't been following you, the past 16 kind of months, a lot of us have been locked down, and gosh, I myself have spent more time in these four walls than I ever imagined. But it's been a kind of a different experience for you. Talk us through where you were when JFK was shot. Where were you? Where were you when COVID hit? And then talk us through a snapshot of what your life has been like since COVID hit.
So yeah, when COVID hit, I was actually in Mallorca.
Okay.
And the weekend the government started shutting down, they made the announcement like the day before, right? Yep. I was watching the news and I was supposed to fly home that next day as they were saying people need to get home and they're going to be shutting down airports and borders and all of this. So as I was like, and initially they said it was a 2-week lockdown. They're like, it's only 2 weeks. So I seen on the news, like Madrid airport was insane, and I had to fly through Madrid, and it was just chaos. And when I seen that on the news, I was like, I don't want to go into that. Like that looks stressful. And if anything, that's where you're going to get sick. It's like
Correct.
going into the masses of people trying to get home. So I had decided, you know what? It's only 2 weeks. I think I'm just going to do lockdown here and then see what happens after that. Anyway, 2 months later, lockdown's finishing, right? And then I was kind of enjoying a bit of freedom in Mallorca again, just because I had been stuck in walls too for the last couple of months. And then I decided, well, I was planning on going to Africa anyway. I was going to go home to Canada, and I had some contracts to do, and then I was going to fly over to Africa. Obviously, everything got canceled. Contracts, everyone's lives kind of got canceled. So I figured, well, I guess I'm just going to fly over to Africa now, because if I go home to Canada now, what am I going home for? And then when am I going to be able to leave again? So I might as well just keep going where I am. I just didn't expect that to turn into over a year in Africa, because then obviously getting home turned out to be very difficult. But it also was a blessing in disguise. I think I was meant to be there. Life is still very normal in Africa. Yes, they take precautions and things like this, but for the most part, things weren't shut down where I was. No lockdowns. Life was still going. No fear. It was a happy place to be. And then that's where my journey ended up taking me. Tanzania, Zambia, Botswana, Malawi. And I'm a slow traveler, so I would stay places for months, right? As long as my visa will let me. And there's no other tourists anywhere. It's like desolate. I've never experienced like this in my life. Yes, it was very sad in a lot of ways, but yes, I am so grateful I also got to see like that, because as travel opens up again, it'll never be like that again. That's once in a lifetime experience. So to see these places like Zanzibar, desolate. Zanzibar is one of the busiest tourist destinations in the world, I think. It's always busy. So to see it desolate was something else. And it's definitely not desolate now. It's very busy again. So the year was tough. There was times when I kind of started getting homesick, but it wasn't really, there was no possibility for me to go home. So then I would feel a little stuck for a couple of days, but then I would just let go. And then amazing things would happen. And I'm like, of course I want to be here. Why would I want to go home when like so many amazing experiences keep happening? And it was cheap to get accommodation because there was no tourists. So everyone would give me such a good deal, especially when I was staying long-term, because staying long-term, you always get good deals. It was really, really amazing. I think the last year and a half, some of the best traveling of my life, for sure.
It's like the just as you're saying it there, two of the things which absolutely strike me really is and whether or not you feel it as such, but I certainly think this way, and I'd be interested to know what our listeners think. I just think how it strikes me as being incredibly courageous when coronavirus has kicked off, and you figure, you know what, now's the time to go off traveling. That to me seems incredibly courageous, but at the same time, I completely get it. It's the ultimate once in a lifetime low season trip stroke extravaganza, really. That, like you said, it'll never happen again. I remember actually thinking myself that first summer in 2020, I've never been to Venice. Not a big deal, but it's just somewhere I'd always fancied. It seemed quite a romantic kind of a place, and I'd always wanted to go to Venice. And because of the massive amount of over-tourism in Venice, I actually resigned myself in the past 5 years that I'm never going to go to Venice, because the Venice that exists now is frankly, it's not how I would want to enjoy it. Therefore, I've missed the opportunity to experience Venice as I would like to experience it. And in that summer, I just figured, you know what? I've got an opportunity here to experience Venice as I would like to experience Venice, without the crowds. And I didn't go. And that's just such a huge regret that I have. So I kind of get completely, just and I respect it so much. You took that opportunity. You saw the opportunity, understood that it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you absolutely grabbed it, and got so much respect to you for that. I am right in saying as well, and again for our listeners, you are writing a book about your experiences on this, right?
Yes, I'm currently writing a book based on the last unexpected year and a half abroad. Yeah. So, and that's called Fearless, and that hopefully will be finished in the next few months, and then I can publish it.
Awesome. And then you'll have to come back on the show to let everybody know about it and to to talk it through. That would be absolutely awesome. Really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you.
Next question. So this is another one. When I look through, your feed on YouTube, and like I say, I just think, Petrena is living the life that genuinely I think I was destined to live your life. Maybe it's been a mix-up somewhere, but I just it looks utterly awesome. I've got to ask the question: Are there any downsides to the life that you've had? Certainly for at least the last sort of year and a half. For this kind of life that you live at the moment, are there any downsides to it? Are there any times when it's seriously hard, as life can be at times?
I think especially going into this, not expecting for this to be my life the last year and a half, I definitely can get tiring living out of a bag and, moving from place to place, which is also why I travel slowly, because I like to have my little room. I like to set it up, make my little space. So I think it does get tiring in that sense of like moving around so much. So there's been times I think that's when I get homesick, is like, I just miss my own space. I miss, having everything I need. And then with the experiences though, those always make up for it. So things can get really tough and then I can get homesick and then all this, but then something really amazing, some incredible experience that had I have not been there, I would never have gotten happens. So it evens out in the end. But now it definitely feels good to be home where I can, kind of like have my routine and have a little bit of downtime with my own space and all this. I think that's necessary for my soul, especially because, in Mallorca, I had an apartment that I subletted for my time there. So I did have my own space. Coming to Africa has just been kind of like go, go, go. And where am I going next? And okay, what countries am I able to go to easily? Where can I get a test to cross this border? So it was a lot of unknown, but really, and like I said, the experiences outweigh the bad.
The disadvantages, absolutely. Yeah, no, I can get that. Again, for our listeners at home, you, well, I'll let you say it in your own words. But you were a masseuse as you travelled through Africa. Tell us, how did this happen? How did it come about? And what was it like?
Well, actually, so this goes back to me when I was fulfilling my dream of going to Africa. So after I had finished working in the jungles of Central and South America, leading volunteer projects, I was in Canada working, saving money to now go do this next trip. And when I was looking at the map, trying to decide, well, where in Africa do I want to go? I never really thought about what I wanted to see in Africa. I just knew I wanted to see Africa. That's when I looked at the map and seen Cape Town, seen Cairo, and I was like, well, that looks like a good trip, start in Cape Town, go all the way up the east, finish in Cairo. I had read about other people doing it, so I was like, okay, it's doable, so why not? I figured it would take 3 months to do it, because I had read of people doing it in 3 months. So I saved money for 3 months, and then off I go. I ended up in this surf town called Jeffreys Bay in South Africa and fell in love with it, and there were such cool people, and decided, well, I want to stay here for a while. That while turned into 5 months. So I had spent my 3 months with the travel money, and I still have a whole continent to cross. And I'm like, okay, so I'm in the first country. I still have to get all the way to Egypt, and I've now spent all my money. I've been here 5 months. So that's when I had decided, with my massage background, I was like, well, I'll get a portable massage table and I'll start my little massage business. And that I started doing it there at the backpackers that I was living at in Jeffreys Bay, and getting some money so that I could keep going. And then I ended up carrying that table across Africa. So using it, I'd find overland camps where the overland tour trucks would come through with all the tourists that have been on a truck for weeks. Of course, people want a massage. So put up my little sign. Once one person got one, then they're telling everyone, she's amazing, you have to get one. So then some days I'd have 10 massages in a day. Sometimes I was in places where there was no tourists and no place for me to do massage. So then that's when I'd be just like getting to the locals. People would have me stay at their house. a lot of people thought I was crazy. Like when I would show up in like rural villages after I've been on the bus for like 30 hours, I'd turn around and there would be a whole village crowded around me as they're pulling my table off the roof of this bus that they tied it onto. Like I've turned around, there's like all I see is like big white eyes staring at me. They're like, "Hello, doctor." I'm like, "I am not a doctor. Like this is not like a surgery table. I'm definitely not a doctor. I'm doing massage." So yeah, it was crazy. And then, this was just a solution to a problem that I had. It was definitely not easy because there was so many times where I was living off $1 a day, couldn't even afford food. If I was in a place where there was no tourists, no overland tour camps for me to, set up my little shop. So sometimes I had $1 a day and I could only afford like either a small meal or like a big beer that would like fill me up with the carbonation depending on where I was. And but then I started, and I'd have to carry that table for 5 hours sometimes. Like if I'm in rural places trying to get from one place to another, I'd have my backpack, my massage table, which I strategically placed on the strap of my backpack because it did weigh about 25 pounds or something.
Oh, wow.
So it was actually like, it was quite heavy.
Yeah.
So I would strategically place it on that backpack strap so it wouldn't dig into my shoulders. And I would have to carry it pouring sweat in like 50-degree weather. And, sometimes locals would be like, "Oh, want me to carry this for you?" But if I didn't have money to give them to carry it, I couldn't say yes. Yeah. So I'd be like, no, sorry, I don't have any money for you to carry it. And they'd look at all the stuff I was carrying. They're like, "Wow, I'm really sorry for you." I'm like, "I'm sorry for me too." I've been carrying this for 5 hours. I'm pouring sweat. I'm tired. But then I started getting emails from people as I was crossing Africa. People would be like, "Oh my gosh, Petrena, people I met along the way. I'm in Mozambique. Everyone's talking about you, the girl traveling Africa with her massage table." Then I'd get an email from someone else. "Petrena, oh my gosh, I'm in Malawi. Everyone's talking about you. You're famous. The girl traveling Africa with her massage table." I would walk into like a new country and go to check in somewhere. And they would see my name. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're Petrena. You're the girl traveling Africa with her massage table. We heard about you." And I'm like, "What is going on here? Like, really, I just ran out of money and I'm just trying to like complete this trip." And it is creating these ripple effects across the continent. I ended up getting rid of the table by the time I got to Uganda because I'd carried it so far. I was tired. I was tired of that table and we were no longer friends. And there was like a family there that was learning massage. And so they didn't have a table. And so, the guest house, the one guy was actually like a manager of the guest house. So he made a deal with me for a little bit of free accommodation. They'll take the table. And I was like, "Yep, the table is all yours. You can definitely have my table." And like, I wish it brings lots of success and money into your life, but like my shoulders hurt. so I finished the trip without it.
But what a wonderful, what wonderful that, through doing that, you kind of inadvertently became a celebrity across the African continent, which I just think is wonderful. But what a great way, what a great conversation starter as well. A great way, then once people sort of, have heard of you or whatever else, kind of reassuring. But I just love that. I just want to learn how to do massages and bring a massage table with me. Although I want a light table, I don't want a heavy table.
I know, it was such a nice table. I'm not gonna lie, very nice table, but heavy. And actually, speaking of learning massage, I did when I was in Zanzibar during that trip. I was doing workshops for the local women who did massage but never had formal training. Because if I was in a place like that where locals did massage, like I wouldn't ever do it. But I would be happy to train people and like share my skills to help them better their business. So I did do that.
Absolutely love that. When we talk about Africa, just there are a lot of people, and I would even include some of my friends that I know that have never been to the continent of Africa. Where if I was to sort of say to them, seriously, you've got to go to Africa, you will love it. And they sort of like a bit, they feel like it's not for them. They get nervous or something. There's something about Africa that feels to them like it's going to be, I don't know, difficult, less familiar. I don't know what it is, but there seems to be a hesitancy. If you were to sort of say, "Hey, bucket list destination, go," and it's like, it's Thailand, it's the Caribbean, it's, I don't know, the Maldives, whatever else. And very rarely is it Africa. And I'm always really surprised by that because, like you, I'm absolutely in love with the continent of Africa. Absolutely adore it. Everything about Africa. So I just want to get from you, if there's anybody out there that's sort of never been to the continent of Africa and they're thinking about a tentative trip to Africa, not necessarily for a year and a half, maybe even if it's sort of, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. Do you have any kind of any tips or tricks or bits of advice for people who may be considering going to Africa for the first time?
Well, let me think here. Actually, okay, let me quickly touch on what you said about people having this fear of Africa. It's so true. When I first booked that plane ticket to Cape Town, return from Cairo, not planning anything, a local newspaper from Northern Canada, where I'm from Northwest Territories, but there was a newspaper for all 3 territories, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, which are all the 3 territories up by Alaska. There was a journalist who got wind of what I was doing, and he was like, please, can I interview you? So they did a whole 1-page write-up on me in the newspaper about me going to Africa, going to cross it from Cape Town to Cairo before we knew I was going to have a massage table. And then when I was in town and people who had read the article seen me, they were like, oh my gosh, Petrena, I seen that article about you in the newspaper. And I was like, oh, no, wait, that's awesome. And they'd put their hand out and they're like, have fun dying in Africa. And I was like, what? And after the first few people said this, I was like, what are they talking about? I'm not going to die in Africa. But then people continued to say it. And I mean, I'm from a small town, so it's also probably a lot to do with that. But, by the time the 20th person said it, I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I am going to die in Africa. Who knows? I've never been there, but I could die in Canada. So I'm going to take my chances of fulfilling my dream rather than sit here. And then obviously I didn't die because here I am today. But yeah, that's the one thing I would tell people. First and foremost, it's not a scary place. I don't know why it has that reputation of being so scary. It's definitely not scary, although I did get robbed in Dar es Salaam last year. So in the cities, you really have to be mindful of your things. Don't go out. And it was only 8 p.m. when I got robbed. So it wasn't even late. So just really be mindful of what you're carrying with you. Try not to carry all your stuff with you, where you'll end up like me, where your purse got cut off by a couple guys on a motorbike. Yeah. And so you definitely have to be mindful of your stuff, but it's not a scary place. I've never felt threatened. I never felt like my life was going to be over. I mean, well, there was one time, but that could happen anywhere. We're not going to get into that.
but as well, I think when people sort of say, oh, you could get robbed. I remember actually, all right, not Africa, but the first time I went to Brazil, and there's people saying to me, accept it now. You're going to be robbed. You are going to be robbed, and if you can just come to terms with that now and accept that, then it'll be easier when it happens. And you're like, well, okay, well, how can you say that? And then, I hear stories all the time of Barcelona, places, big European safe cities in Europe, where people get robbed blind left, right, and centre. And I just think, come on, we need to get a bit of perspective on that. I'm just not sure whether sometimes with Africa, it's a bit of ignorance, actually. It's a little bit less known, a lot of Africa, and people don't feel that they know it as much, and therefore it's that ignorance sort of breeds a fear. And maybe it's only when you actually, as they say, when you go, when you go, you realize that the sense of community that you feel there is way better than any sense of community you feel in most parts of the world. But it does interest me. See, all this talk about Africa is really making me want to go back to Africa. Right now. You are influencing me here, Petrena.
And I would tell people, with Africa, there's everything can be bartered, right? There's always, when you do business, there's always 2 prices in Africa. There is the tourist price and there's a local price. And, everything is, what's the word I'm looking for? Barter, yes, but everything is
negotiable.
Thank you. The word was just not coming into my head. Yes, everything is negotiable. So you can pretty much negotiate anything, because a lot of times they will set the bar really high first just to see if you're going to grab it. So just know that you can usually go almost down half, because sometimes they just try and go extra high. Can't blame them. But and also every country you go to, this is something I do. I try and learn how to say hello, thank you, just like the very common words, because people will treat you so much better because you're showing respect for their country, for their culture, for their language. And you don't have to say a lot, just those small words. It's crazy how it transforms people instantly. I've had people who were kind of hard to me in the beginning. And as soon as I used a couple of words in their language, their whole face changed towards me and they became so warm. And they're like, how can I help you? So it's amazing what showing that little bit of respect will do. And get to know the locals for sure in Africa, because Africans are some of the most warm and hospitable people you'll ever meet. They're so generous. Everything's about sharing in Africa. It's such a unique experience, and it feels so magical being in that respect. So don't just stick to the touristy things. Really get to know the locals, because that's where a lot of the magic happens. And that's where it really starts to get into your blood, right? It's just Africa does get into the blood.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Like I say, it's just making me want to go. Now, before we let you go, a couple more questions. One is, I know it's hard to talk about this now because you've only just arrived back home, but when you think about future travels, is there anything on the horizon or anywhere that you'd like to go? I think you sort of mentioned Asia there before, but is there anywhere or that you'd like to go? And I know that you're an opportunist, kind of you'll go where the opportunities are. But is there anywhere that you sort of thinking, yeah, I want that destination or that place to be in my future travel plans?
Well, I'm going to Hawaii in a couple months.
Oh, cool.
I have a friend that's moving there, so she's like, "You got to come stay." And so we plan for me to go in November. So that's exciting. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. Now I have a reason to go. So I'll be doing lots of videos while I'm there and sharing all of that, which is exciting. And I'll pop back to Africa and Mallorca as well, because I'm still doing I'm doing a fundraiser for the Maasai community there. And Mallorca is my second home. And then Tibet, Nepal, and India are something I've been top of my list for years. So I really want to go do Tibet, Nepal, and India when I can.
Oh yeah, awesome. And Hawaii, that's another one that's been on my bucket list for about 30 years now, and I still haven't gotten there yet. Listen, if you're going to be going around there, I need to see absolutely everything. When will you be going there? Are you going there in the kind of the winter time?
In November.
So that's when, because Hawaii for me I was always fascinated by the big surf. And obviously it's huge surf in parts of the North Shore of Oahu and around there. And I know you've obviously been to Jeffreys Bay there in South Africa. But I'd just love to see just how big those waves really do get. So I'll be absolutely following you, of course, and looking forward to your video footage there as well. That'll be super awesome. Yeah, last thing, you touched on this. You're supporting a project to build sustainability for a Maasai village. So clearly this is something quite important to you. First of all, tell us a little bit about that. And I think you've got like a Just Giving page set up. Tell us a little bit about it. But then also I'd like you to expand on that and let us know what responsible and sustainable travel means to you, as well as maybe any tips for being a better, sustainable, more responsible traveler for our audience as well.
Yeah. Okay. I almost feel like I'll start with the sustainability and responsible travel first, and then I'll tell you what the volunteer project, the fundraiser I'm doing. Sorry.
Yep.
For me, like the sustainable travel is trying not to leave a footprint everywhere you go. Trying to be especially to the environment and things like that, being as mindful as you can to the environment of where you're going to, especially when you're in remote communities. Like when I was in the Maasai community and spending time there, you want to leave no trace and live how they live, right? So really in tune with nature and the environment. Just try and leave people better than how you found them. Also, I always like to, no matter where I go, just do something a little extra in a way that I leave people better than how I found them. And in a way, they're never going to forget you then either. And I think it's hard, obviously, with airplanes and stuff, because if we're talking about the environment, well, how do we get around the world, right? But there's just ways that we can be more ethical and responsible about things. Obviously, there's nothing perfect in this world, so we're still going to take our airplanes and stuff like that. But yeah, just be mindful of where you are and be mindful of not leaving your footprints and things like that. To me, that's responsible travel.
Absolutely. No, I love that.
And I do love how, actually, let me say this too, a lot of places in Africa, this was amazing to me this time around, are all eco lodges. Everything's becoming eco, and they're all doing solar power. And I just think that's amazing because 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I'm crossing Africa, you didn't see solar anywhere. And now it's so readily available that all of these lodges and things are trying to become off grid, and they're, really trying to have less of an impact on the environment, which was incredible to me. So, really look for those lodges, because there's so many of them now that are becoming eco lodges. And then, you're also doing something good in your traveling.
I love that.
So, yeah.
It's interesting actually, because there's parts of Africa. I was in Kigali, and in Kigali, I hadn't realized it. So have you been to, you must have been to Kigali, have you? It's so clean. And I was speaking to a local, and I was saying, again, when people have those perceptions of Africa, that's not what I had. I mean, it's, again, for our listeners, for anybody that hasn't been, Kigali is spotless. I mean, spotless.
It is.
And I was asking one of the locals, I said, gosh, I just didn't expect that. Shame on me. And I said, how is it so clean? And they said, well, every month you have the cleanup day, where everybody in the community, they all take a day where they clean up. And it's not policed. It's not forced by the government. It's going back generations and generations, where you would always look after your own space. But on the cleanup day, everybody in the community looks after their own space. And if somebody's not doing it, if your neighbor's not doing it, you'd be saying, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you doing the cleanup? But because everybody cleans up their own space, they're then reticent to litter the space, because they're only going to have to clean it up at the end of the month anyway. Therefore, it's better all round if we just, make sure it's all kind of looked after. And I sort of think that's the kind of stuff that we need to learn from Africans actually as well. Because let me tell you, where I live I'm living in just north of Manchester here. I can tell you, it is not spotless. In fact, actually, at times it's embarrassing. It's far from spotless. You see people fly tipping and stuff like this, and I just think society, community, it's a little bit broken. And I think that's what we can kind of learn from the Africans. But tell us about this project that you've got, this fundraiser that you're doing to build sustainability for a Maasai village, because I think that's really important.
So after spending time in the Maasai community and just assessing their needs and seeing, they were really having a hard time creating sustainability in their lives, having a hard time just affording life's necessities like healthcare, education, healthy food, they just didn't have the means to do it. So I really wanted to help them with their dream, is to have their own business so that they can create that sustainability and take care of themselves. And then that kind of got me going, thinking like, well, I want to help them. I want to help them get a business going. And I want to help them be able to have that sustainability. And another part of that business, if we can just get the small business going first, then the second part is they would love to have a maize grinder, because way out in rural Africa, everyone has to grind their maize to make ugali, and it costs sometimes a lot of money. You have to go far to find someone who has a machine to do it. So I would love to get them that machine so they can start grinding their maize and start a little business of being the ones that people go to in that area. The women, I was able to get some people in Canada who wanted some of the Maasai jewelry to buy some jewelry, so the women got to feel what it was like to have a bit of income. They've never experienced that before, and they got to make some of their jewelry. They would love to do more of that, and I taught them how to go to the post office and how you mail it and everything. So this is what the fundraiser is all about, is getting their business going and creating that sustainability so that they can take care of themselves, because they're very capable of taking care of themselves, and they just love that idea of being able to create their own income. So I want to help them do that.
That's fabulous. So what we'll do is we'll make sure for anybody out there on the episode notes, we'll make sure that there's links there to the GoFundMe page, so that if anybody would like to donate, and I'm sure any amount, small or large, would be gratefully received, and it's making a real difference. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Petrena, we have arrived at the end of our time together. You've been first of all, you've been so generous with your time. It's been so fascinating speaking to you, and a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I'd love to do this again sometime, and maybe we could talk again once you're in Hawaii or after you return from Hawaii, and hear a little bit more about your Hawaiian adventures as well. That would be awesome. But I just want to thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful and a pleasure and a delight speaking to you. So thank you for your time. And again, we'll have all the episode notes on with all of the information that everybody might need to follow you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
I've
loved it.
Thanks, Petrena.
Thank you.
And there you have it. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I am definitely itching to book a ticket to somewhere in Africa right now. I cannot recommend highly enough Petrena's feed on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Her videos are absolutely fascinating as she takes the viewer on a cultural journey under the skin of the destinations and communities she visits. You can also find her content on her website, apursuitoflife.com. And of course you can find more information about Petrena on the Low Season Traveller website under the Influencer Series heading. Before we finish up this series, I'd also like to highlight the fundraiser which Petrena has set up. It's such a worthy cause, and you can find full details and links on the episode show notes on the Low Season Traveller website under Influencer Series. It's such a worthwhile cause, and every pound, euro or dollar makes a difference, no matter how small. But that's a wrap for this week, and indeed for this first Influencer series. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to our wonderful guests as much as I've enjoyed speaking with them. And if you have enjoyed this series, please do leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you've any questions for our guests or any feedback on any of these episodes, please do send them to me directly at jed@lowseasontraveller.com. Finally, I'd just like to give my huge thanks once again to Emma, Tolu, Dasha, Bugo, Talia and Petrena for sharing their insights with us and inspiring us to dream of future travels. Please do make sure that you give them all a follow and share their content and podcasts with your friends and family. We're currently working on our second Influencer series later in the year, but until then, take good care, stay healthy, stay safe, keep your travel dreams alive, and remember that travel is always better without the crowds.